I think what you need with this particular method of meditation is a very, very open mind, because it really kind of challenges you to investigate things that maybe you've never considered before. Because when I talk to other monks, they have pretty kind of rigid views about what is needed to have insight or to attain some kind of fruit, like a certain state of concentration or something like that. And if you really want to know the truth, then you have to have a very open mind and not be afraid to ask questions. Like, sometimes people say things, like Lompati, and sounds very strange. But when you actually have some confidence that he's actually done it, then you really listen. So his words become very meaningful and have a lot of weight to them, and you really want to know. Like in the beginning, I wasn't actually all that interested in what he had to say, because I just wanted to know about awareness and how to practice it and how to integrate it into my life. And all this stuff about Rupa Nama and blah blah blah. I thought, come on, what is this? This guy never read the books. But then I started to see that actually what he was saying did have meaning. And from my experience, from my little experience practicing with awareness, I found that actually what he was saying was right on. And I actually went through these certain stages that he described. Like there's a certain point where you start to have a little bit of insight, and then what's called the vipassanupa kilesa start to arise, which is a kind of kilesa which is a bit better than the ordinary lopa dosa moha. And it's really true what he said. I didn't think it would happen to me, it did. So he was actually a very, very special person. Some people say he was a bit like a Zen master. He didn't talk that much, but he would have little interviews with people, and people who were serious, he would see that people were serious, and he would say, okay, you can do a retreat, and the people will send you some food, and you just practice all day long. And I will come 3 times a day and have a little interview with you and ask you what's going on and what to be careful about, and he could really see where people were at, and so he was actually a very remarkable teacher.
You think he was enlightened?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure of it. No doubt about it. And he was very frank about that as well. He wouldn't sort of say, well, I'm a monk and I shouldn't be talking about these things. And he didn't know very much about Vinaya, actually. And whenever he would give a talk, he would quite often talk about his own experiences. But basically, you can have a sense of what he is saying, obviously, is coming from his experience. He didn't read that in a book. And he's not lying, or he's not telling stories, to kind of impress anybody. It's totally clear that he knew what he was talking about. And it's quite amazing how fast it happened to him. Incredible.
It's just a question, because those scholar monks, they would say, oh yeah, he was a nice monk, but that's not Nibbana according to the scriptures and la la la. They would pinpoint.
Yeah, but who do you believe? Who do you believe, a scholar monk who doesn't realize Nibbana, or would you believe in Arhat? But you have to kind of see for yourself. Just to read a book, a translation from Thai to English, is not the same as kind of for years kind of listening to these people.
In the West, it's not very popular, this method, right? It's probably unknown.
Well, it's not known. Yeah, that's it. I'm the only Westerner basically, except for this other one monk, but he stopped practicing after a while. And so that's the reason why I started to translate some of these things. I thought, if I don't do it, nobody will. But I don't have intention to go and tell people about this and become famous or something. But yeah, people don't know about it, and even in Thailand, there's not that many people who know about it, actually. Sometimes you meet people who say, oh, this strange method where you're moving your hands, isn't it? That's all they know, but they don't know how profound it is. And a lot of monks as well, like they'll ask me about it, and I explain something, and they want to have some idea, so they can put a label on it. They say, oh, it's awareness of the body, is it? It's awareness of movement. Oh, I understand. Yeah. But they don't. They don't see how profound it actually is. You have to really do it, and for some time, to see that.
No, for the beginners, it could be this kind of mind which jumps from one point to the other, and it encourages kind of a jumping mind. Because people like stillness, people like to be in the one, people like samatha.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a kind of
there's an incredible attachment to samatha.
Yeah.
That's what people think meditation is, and then you come with this method. It's that. It doesn't look beautiful, but it's not a jumping, it's a coming back. It's a coming back again and again and again and again, a million times. Coming back to the present, coming back to awareness, coming back to the body. And that is real. The body is real. The present is real. So it's not just kind of jumping from this thought to that thought or something, or this thought is better than that thought. No. It's coming back to the present. And in the beginning, it's basically, it's more awareness of the body. That's where you start. You don't start right with looking at thought. You can't. It needs a kind of certain stage of awareness before you can actually see that. And that's not something you decide, it just happens. And so the phrase that Lompotian uses, which I'm really impressed with actually, it's really very simple. He says man kit, which is Thai, which means it thinks. So it's not I think, but the mind. The mind has this nature to think, and then one day you see it thinks. And then you actually see that's what it means. The thinking is an object, and then as soon as the thinking is an object, there's this distance from it. There's this nibbida and viraga and all the rest of it. You can get to the experts and ask, well, what is viraga? What is nibbida? And they can blah blah blah. Yeah, well, when you actually see thought as an object, that's where you see it. I mean, if you have a pain in your knee or something, you're just aware of it. You actually see, well, it's a changing thing, It's kind of, sometimes the pain's worse, and the more you pay attention to it, the more difficult it is to give a name to it. So, there can be something undescribable, like there's some strange mood in somewhere, you don't know quite what it is. But as long as you don't actually think about it, then you don't have any like or dislike for it. It's just what it is. And, it's only when you start thinking, it's, well, I'm suffering. But actually, even you feel uncomfortable, it's not actually suffering. It's like this. It's only when you start to think, then it becomes uncomfortable. Most of the time, we suffer because we think. But, don't think that thinking is going to stop altogether just like that because you practice awareness. It happens like a little bit, in a flash, and it's like in Thai. I think in Thai, the word for delusion is long. So the Lompo Khamkhi, and one of the things he says is really incredibly profound. He says, do you know, or ru long, which means do you know or are you deluded? These are the two possibilities. Is it light or is it darkness? It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that, it's incredible. And I've heard Ajahn Sumedho say things like that. It's either sankata or asankata. It's as simple as that. If there's awareness, then there is no thought, there's no delusion. And delusion has got so many varieties, and none of it is there. It cannot exist. Delusion cannot exist when there's light. So all you need to do, and that is why Lompo Tien gives this incredible simile. He says, it's a bit crazy, but he says it's like somebody who doesn't know how the electric light works. And he kind of sees this light bulb, and he starts to turn on the light bulb, and the light doesn't go on. And then somebody says, hey, it's a switch, you see, the switch, and you do the switch and the light goes on. So that's all you need to do. You don't have to fight with yourself, you don't have to fight with defilements, you don't have to try to stop thinking and develop your jhana and all that kind of stuff and try to manipulate this light bulb. It's just awareness, and the light goes on. But keep your finger on the switch, because as soon as you take your finger off,
every thought, even this intentional thought, is different. Either they're sneaky or not sneaky. I want to go into them because they're so exciting, and that's why there's a problem, right? If there would be just thoughts popping up and I wouldn't give interest for them, it'd be no problem. But the problem is that they pop up, and They are
They have
very
a power.
interesting. Right.
They have a magnetic field.
Right.
But the motivation to go into them, that is delusion. Unless, like we're having a Dhamma discussion now, I mean, then we just choose to talk about these things. And I don't see any delusion about that. Because, I mean, I actually decide to talk about these things. And that's okay. Or even when you're working, you need to think in order to work. You know, I mean, that's okay. That's neutral. That's not the kind of thought that creates defilements. But if there's a certain dimension of delusion in it, it's almost like you want to get lost in it for a while. Well, there you go. That's all delusion. So that's why they're called sneak thoughts. And that is very interesting, very insightful, that you don't actually want to think, but the thoughts, they just come in. Because it's their nature, their habit. It's a very bad habit. So now what we do is we create the other habit. We create the habit of coming back, of being aware, wake up. And that is also a habit. That is also something you can develop. And when that becomes strong enough, it starts to arise by itself. Like if you're really an advanced meditator, like Lampa Kamki, you know, he says it's like a dashboard, you know, where things just pop up on the dashboard. Where some thought arises, and immediately it's like a flash, you know, you just immediately come back to awareness. You don't have to intentionally do it. So it becomes automatic.
So you rewire your brain, in other words.
I don't know if that's a good expression, but you know, they actually talk about things which probably not in the scriptures, but they say mahasati. Mahasati, what it means is automatic awareness. The point where you're, I suppose, anagami, a thought arises and immediately you see it and you come back. You don't have to think it anymore. You don't have to intend it anymore. It becomes such a habit because you're doing it all the time that it happens by itself, automatic.
So it bounces from your head. In other words, it doesn't stick.
And the once returner is where you actually know the way out, but you're not quite quick enough.
And Sotapanna?
Well, that is where you actually see thought as not self, where you really see that it's not me who's thinking. Where you used to think that these are my thoughts, my opinion, and then you actually see, how can this be an object? You know, this is really amazing thing. You know, how can thoughts be an object over there? Like as clear as you can see that piece of wood over there is an object. And you can actually experience your thoughts in the same way. Or like you can do a little experiment and you ask yourself, what is the next thought I'm going to think? Is it going to be a thought about the future or the past or the present, or is it a Dhamma thought or a stupid thought, or is it about me or about somebody else? Ask yourself and just watch. And then maybe nothing comes up for a while because you're actually aware. So the thoughts, they're afraid of the light, so they won't come up. But after a while, the thought starts to pop in, and then you say, hey, it's that thought. Oh.
The thought that I should come back to the practice because my mind is like that. There's also a thought.
That's a thought, yeah, that's not awareness.
Right.
So there's a difference between awareness and understanding awareness and then thinking about it, and you think, hey, why doesn't it work? Because it's not awareness, it's thinking about awareness.
Yeah, but that thought is a good one.
No,
it's not.
No, you have to be aware. You don't have to think about awareness. Thinking about awareness is just thinking. It's just more shit. It's no good. No, and that is the problem. The more you talk about awareness and explain it, more ideas you get in your mind, and you think, oh, now I understand it. But you understand it intellectually, and then you try to use that intellectual understanding in practice. It doesn't work. What you need is awareness, not anything else. But at a certain point, it's no longer any hindrance when thought arises. In fact, there comes a point where you kind of enjoy it because some defilement arises or some thoughts arise, and you're ready for it. So you actually say, there's another one. and Lompotia, he says these crazy things. He said the more thoughts arise, the better it is because you get more practice. And so he really discourages people from practicing samatha and getting to a peaceful state of mind, because if you're in a peaceful state of mind, you're concentrated on your nose, the thoughts don't come. So there's no insight is going to come. Your awareness doesn't get sharpened, doesn't get practiced. You just get stuck in this peaceful state. This is a very direct way, and it's very practical. Basically, anybody can do it. Like when you're talking about getting into jhana, I mean, there's not many people who can actually do that. Even monks who've been practicing for years, not everybody can do it. And you got a lot of piti coming up. That's the hindrance. Piti is another. It's considered it's a bad thing actually, because you can really get stuck in that. And it's one of the vipassanupa kilesa. And so the teachers, they know that because they've gone through it. And so they see somebody who's crying with pity and say, hey, you're getting stuck. Come back to awareness. So the advice is always the same. No matter what happens, if you have a lot of thoughts or you can't sleep or you have pity or you have headaches, come back to awareness. And like sometimes they'll say, you have to relax a bit, when you look far away in the distance can help. If you have any tension, things like that, really practical things.
Well, you need to have a teacher then.
Well, I mean, the instructions aren't so difficult, Once you understand, then basically you don't need to rely on a teacher forever. Like we don't. I think one thing which I kind of like about this method is that they don't talk so much about teaching this method, but about introducing it. So they just introduce it, and somebody who knows about it, and then it's up to you to just go ahead and do it. And if you've got questions, we talk about it. Or somebody might come and ask you how you're doing if you're doing intensive practice. But basically, it's up to you. It's just here's the method. It's very simple. You don't need to read 500 books to understand it. Just give up all these books and find out for yourself. Well, of course, it is helpful if you have an experienced teacher. Because, like, I actually did one Vasa. That was the second one, I think, or the first Vasa. When I switched to this method, Lompo Jiran, I translated the book of his. That's the third book. You haven't got it, and I really loved him. He's a kind of quite old monk, and the way he talks, I mean, there's so much honesty in his voice, and he used to come to my place and ask me how you're doing and have a little interview, and I used to really respect him so much. I really listened to what he said, and every word he said, it kind of has weight to it. And I remember one day he said, most people, they know gladness and sadness. Now we practitioners, we also know two things. We know normality and what is not normality. And that's about all he said. Then he left. And it was very profound. What does that mean, normality? It means the mind which is free from gladness and sadness, which is free from thinking. That's normality. And once you know that, then you're all right. Like you wouldn't believe it. This tradition is basically in the northeast of Thailand, and the people in the northeast they're very simple people. They live on a farm and somewhere. Looking after buffaloes, and half of them they've never been to school, and some of the people that Lompo Tien used to teach right at the beginning, when he was still a layperson, he hadn't even ordained yet, were just some old ladies that he used to know, because he used to be the headman of the village, and he was really respected very highly, and so people they trusted him completely. If Lompo Tien says this, then it's this. There's no doubt about it. So. Those people, they had a lot of confidence. They didn't have any scriptural knowledge, but they had a lot of confidence. And he just told them to go ahead and practice. So there they go. Sada, Vidya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. And, the old ladies, they got it. They had some of these old people and these people who used to look after buffaloes. They didn't ask a lot of questions, and they weren't complicated, but they had this faith, this confidence in Lompo Tien, and I think that was something very special, because some of the monks also, they had a lot, when they heard this news about Lompo Tien, They just knew intuitively that it's got to be right. You know, he must really be enlightened. So they went to see him. He said, "You really got it. You know, what are you teaching? What are you?" And they really listen and they really do it. You know, and they get results also. Like the abbot of the main monastery, Watsanam, where I used to stay. He's also a very simple person, and he got very quick results with Lompotier, just in like 40 days or something. That really made it clear to me, you know, that all this stuff, all this reading and all these books, you know, and these people with all these opinions and the endless kind of stuff, and now they even get into computers, and I mean, they're on the wrong track. I mean, I don't see any enlightened people here in Sri Lanka. I mean, if there are, maybe just a Sotapanna, one or two, but in Thailand it's different. There's lots of people with insight that nobody knows about, because they don't go and teach, or they couldn't. And, you know, when you really get into the practice, you kind of get a feel for it, you know, that actually there really isn't much to say. It's just a matter of being aware. And what more is there to say, you know? It just becomes so simple. Like Lompo Kamkien also, when you really listen to him, he doesn't have much to say, actually, you know? He keeps saying the same thing again and again. He just come back to awareness, no matter what it is. It just cuts through everything.
But you see, Bhante, it's like, this is not new. People have this instruction, come back to awareness, be aware, you know yourself. It's all been, you know, for 2,500 years, or even more.
Well, intellectually, yeah. I mean, everybody will agree that awareness is very important, and it's very important teaching, but who's actually doing it? You know? I mean, just to have an opinion about awareness, or to intellectually understand it, or to intellectually agree with it, it's not good enough. You actually have to have a method and just completely go for it. And if you can do a retreat and do it intensively, even better. And if you have a teacher that inspires you, even better. And if you have a group of people that practice together, even better. But that's the problem, you know, we all have opinions, and some of these opinions, well, they're good opinions, and they're right too, but it doesn't work, because it's all in the mind, it's all just thinking, it's just more thought, it's all more rubbish. You know, you can give a long Dhamma discourse about the nature of Nibbana and the unconditioned and blah blah blah, and it's all just a patujana talking, you know. So I mean, I just don't respect any of that, you know, these guys with their titles and their Pali scriptures, and that's not the way, you know. It's not the way, definitely not.
Right.
Sometimes you can just see the attachment that people have to certain ideas, and even like things like superstition, you know, or clinging to Vinaya and the rules and stuff like that. When I see that, I kind of really turn away, you know, because it's very, very difficult to talk to these people. You can't just tell them, you know, this is Silabhata Paramasa, this is not the way, you know, it's not going to lead you anywhere. You can't talk like that, because they're so attached. You see, Lompotier, he had been practicing Dhamma for, it's quite interesting, his biography actually, because he had been practicing Samatha, and I would say that he probably had jhana, because he could sit all night long for every day of the week. And one day he went to a doctor and he said, something like, I haven't slept for a week or something. And he said, wow, you have to do something about this. But it was his meditation, you know, he just had really good samatha. But he wasn't impressed with it. And he said, I practice all this samatha and getting all this peace, I don't get any wisdom. And so one day he had a little argument with his wife, and he realized that there was still anger in him. After all this merit that he performed and all this samatha practice. And so he said, now I've had enough of it, and I'm going to do a retreat, and I'm not coming back home until I'm enlightened. He was really determined, you know, and he was a powerful guy, because he was a trader, and he was a headman of a village. He was an important person, and so he was very determined. And he went to this retreat, which was during the Vasa for 3 months, and he got one meditation subject, and he practiced it for a while, and he didn't like it. And then he got another one. He got this one, which came from Burma, I think, originally. And the only difference was that while you're doing these movements, you recite moving, stopping, moving, stopping, moving, stopping. So he threw that out, the reciting inwardly, because that's still basically thinking process going on. So he was just doing it without the reciting. And that very morning, he already had the first stage of insight, which is not such a very big deal, but it's a very essential kind of insight in what he calls rupanama. And it was so powerful, he was actually crying. So he talks about these things in detail, about what the stages he goes through and all that. Yeah, so at first he didn't think about ordaining. He was still a layperson. He was wearing shorts. But then he realized after 2.5 years or something that probably if he were to ordain, he could reach more people, and so he did that.
And he died. When was it?
Well, I've never met him. So he ordained. He died probably about 5 years after I ordained, or something like that. And at that time, I didn't know about him. But I've listened to a lot of his talks.
Because you've practiced with Lumpur Kamki. And how many years have you practiced with him?
Well, I just spent with him one was, and one was with Lumpur Jiran, who's another one of the famous disciples. It's kind of interesting, because I kind of came from this really proper tradition, the Ajahn Chah tradition. I mean, that's kind of regarded in the whole of Thailand and even outside of Thailand as the really proper forest monk with the proper vinaya. And then all of a sudden I go to this school of meditation where things are not so very proper, because they don't care much about the vinaya. And Lumpur Thien and Lumpur Kamki, they use money. Everybody else uses money. I was the only one who didn't. I kept that rule about using money. And they're just not very strict about vinaya at all, They're not very strict about ceremonies and all that kind of thing, and it's not about reading and studying and all that. It's just awareness.
One more thing is that the movement with the hands is kind of unnatural for people, and it's it might look silly or kind of like people don't like it.
Yeah. Well, that really nobody likes it. Even like the big monks who've been practicing for a long time, when they talk about their first days, even Lumpur Kamki, and he says it, I didn't like it either. And everybody thinks, can I skip that over and just kind of go to the next stage or something, Yeah, nobody likes that. It looks much better to kind of sit like this, and pretend I'm really high, Yeah, that's another disadvantage. But that's one reason why it didn't become more popular than it is. And also because there's no Westerners other than me. And I'm not the kind of person to go and tell everybody about it.
You yourself, Bhante, you don't want to go into the world and teach or spread this method?
Well, I've thought about it for a while, to go to America and help out there, because they've got one or two places of the Lumpur Thien tradition, but I've decided that I'm not really that type of person to do that, And I feel pretty good over here with my cat and my boat. But it's not for everybody to do that, But I've still got quite a lot of work to do myself,